We're talking cave shit today.
Talking
Just
about
every
some caves.
talking about caves. Which, if you haven't listened to the episode that Laura and I did on caves a while back when we went to
Yeah.
Laurel, oh my gosh, I
Just
forget.
like we were like, you know what, this is going to be a great idea. But I feel like a lot was probably lost in translation, but it's probably still entertaining.
Oh
Just
no, I went back and I listened to it not too long ago, and I laughed. I mean, like I normally do. I laughed so hard at so many
just
parts
because
because
it's
my
just two weirdos walking through a cave, interviewing random people, hoping for a good experience and
yeah.
wondering if any of what we're doing is going to translate. Because I feel like a cave is a very visual experience,
But I
not an
feel like it
audio.
did. I feel like it. I
Yeah,
feel like it did. I feel like it did.
I hope
And
so.
I've had some people that have reached back out and was like, "Oh, yeah, I know. That was a funny episode." Still, my favorite line in there is "Shout out to Bill."
Yeah,
That old guy.
at the counter. Yeah.
Yeah, Bill. Shout out to Bill. Poor Bill. He's probably still there.
Probably.
800-year-old Bill. All right. So, so
Well, speaking
last,
of 800 billion years old, no, not quite that
yeah.
old. Maybe no, way older. No, not okay. Sorry, I lost. Old. Can't think of my timeline here.
Maybe not as old as Bill,
Maybe
but
not as
old.
old as Bill. But my caves, which actually Katie and I both had the same idea, but I got to it first, was the Cave of Crystals, which is also such a
Which is
cool
a
name.
cool one.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Cave of Crystals, which is in Mexico. And this is the most recent discovery of the ones that I have covered. And as soon as I found out about this, because I found out about this when it got discovered, and I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. This is very much like a geological wonder. So the first one I did was biology. Second one, culture. This one, just straight up rocks and freaking coolness. This place was discovered in the year 2000 by a mining company, of all people, called Industrias Penoles, and they were digging in like near the Chihuahuan Desert. And there was essentially a small mountain there. And they're digging into this mountain and they're digging in and they're finding the ores that they want to. And this whole area was volcanic at one period of time. But finally, they like chunked through and they found an area that was full of water. And so, all mining companies, they pump water out to get to what's below. And when they did that, they found the world's largest crystals that anybody's ever seen. These are giant crystals of gypsum. And when I say giant, I mean like something from Minecraft or
Yeah.
Pandora or something that is not on this planet. Superman, like, something not from Earth. They're 12 meters long, 1 meter wide. Crystal spikes coming out of the earth. That's freaking huge. And they weigh 40 to 50 tons per crystal.
Which is insane.
That's so heavy.
God,
And so they are gypsum. So, how did all of this happen? About 26 million years ago, so maybe as old as Bill,
poor Bill. Shout out to Bill.
magma rose up and formed this mountain. And while it was forming this mountain, it forced hot mineral water into the surrounding limestone rock. And as you might have heard us talk about before, especially if you listen to our cave episode and a couple seasons ago, limestone is like the primary cave rock. It's a soft thing that is easily dissolved. So there's lots of holes and pores and things. So when this hot mineral water is being forced through the limestone, the water became rich in calcium sulfate, and gypsum became the most dominant mineral in the water. And as the water cooled, it stayed super saturated. Okay. So in order to make crystals, you have to have a super saturated solution. That means that it's so filled with a solute, so filled with stuff. Let's say you're stirring, I'm trying to think of how to explain this. Let's say you put salt in water and you're stirring it and the salt all dissolves. And you put more salt in and it all dissolves. You put more salt in and it all dissolves. You want to get to the point where no more salt dissolves. It just stays as a solid. That lets you know that your solution is super saturated. Same with this. This happened in nature. So it stayed just barely super saturated and became the perfect atmosphere for growing these large gypsum crystals because it cooled over millennia. Okay. If it had cooled quickly, the crystals wouldn't have formed the size they were, maybe smaller. But over millennia of cooling, they grew infinitesimally. but to huge proportions. And so they actually tried to they were like, okay, how old are these crystals? It's pretty hard to tell unless you grow them in a lab and then just extrapolate the numbers. So by doing this in the lab, growing them in these conditions, they estimate that it took 1 million years to form
That's insane.
one sheet of paper thickness.
Oh my
Or no, wait,
god.
no, it took 1 million years for them to form each crystal, which means every 200 years, a layer
That's
that's
crazy.
the thickness of a piece of paper was added.
Gosh.
And specifically, these gypsum crystals are transparent and colorless variety known as selenite. So also just freaking gorgeous. Transparent and colorless, just pure crystals.
Yeah.
So when the mine was draining the water, they revealed these crystals and they actually could have kept growing. They were still growing, but now they're not because they're out of the water. So once the crystals aren't in water, they don't grow anymore. It's not like a stalagmite or a stalactite. They're not like dripping to form more. They're just donezo. In fact, they're actually going to start to deteriorate now that they're in the air, unfortunately. And so, of course, you'd be like, wow, why didn't everyone in the world come to see these amazing crystals? Because if I could have, I totally would have, except it is an incredibly dangerous place to visit. The temperature underground there,
Oh
again,
no.
weirdly enough, because it's underground. So normally underground is like 55 degrees. Because this is in, I guess, because of like the volcanic activity of being underground, it is 122 degrees down there.
Oh my
And
gosh.
it's not that deep underground. With a 90% humidity. So again, no cooling down. When you sweat, that's it. You don't cool off. So you actually can become incredibly like you have to wear they were wearing special suits so that you didn't just die.
I
Um
imagine, yeah.
it's hard to navigate physically because of you're climbing over these crystals and through the caves and things. And the researchers who are allowed down there have to go through a health check before they're allowed to go down there to make sure they can survive the conditions, and they're only
Jeez
allowed down in
Louise.
that room for 10 to 15 minutes at a time because it's just too dangerous, especially because like I said, those crystals are 40 to 50 tons and without water to hold them up because they're like sideways. And gypsum is really a really soft rock. They're
Yeah.
very prone to cracking, and you would just die if you would be crushed.
Gosh. I was gonna say,
Um,
yeah, that you don't even stand a chance.
no.
You're just gone.
There's actually another room in this cave called the Room of Swords, and it's very small. It's much smaller gypsum crystals, and by small I mean still 2 feet long crystal spikes. But that one was
Mm.
higher up, so it cooled more quickly. So you can see if you look up pictures how small those spikes are versus how big the ones down lower were and cooled more slowly. However,
Hmm.
or maybe as a bonus, it's like a lost treasure because in 2015, a leak happened in the mine elsewhere and they couldn't drain it fast enough to allow it to be safe. Yes, this place is still out of water, but they actually had to shut down that section of the mine and they have not opened it back up. So, since 2015, it has been closed to humans. Maybe they'll get in another way another time. They're still mining this mountain. They might end up coming in through another direction.
Yeah.
But you never know, it might be sealed up to time. That was our one moment to see it, and now it's gone forever. And like I said, unfortunately, these will deteriorate over time as they're exposed to air. But what an incredible man. I would give
Yeah.
so much to go see them.
Yeah, that would be cool. I mean, minus 120 degrees, which to be fair, that's like Texas. So, I mean, I feel
Right.
like
I
I
could
can
survive it
handle
for
it.
10 to 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Hashtag worth it. Oh my
Right.
gosh.
We
To
do it
feel
every
that
day here.
small and see something like I'm already think the caves are one of the most beautiful things. Like, I went to another one
They're
this
pretty
summer
cool.
just with my campers that I had for camp, and I'm talking like a really tiny cave, but I could not get over how beautiful it was, and so to imagine spikes, I just I would be like, "Oh!"
Right. It would be pretty cool.
It
It
would
would be
just be a
cool.
magical, magical place.
Lord, just be so happy there.
It would be like I would be like in Middle Earth,
Just
just
happy.
just happy. That's the
Alright,
Cave of
guys.
Crystals.
Right, yeah, Cave of Crystals. That was a good one. That was one that Laura and I both we had on our list. So I didn't do a ton of research into it, but I knew enough about it because there's all kinds of
Yeah, like a
documentaries
Time
and
article and all kinds of
yeah,
things. People were like,
all
"This is
sorts
pretty
of stuff
cool."
on it. Yeah. So make sure you guys check it out on Patreon. We'll post some pictures and stuff up on there. And then next week, another regular long episode. And then after that, I'm
Last
going to
Cave
be
Chronicle.
talking. Yeah, last Cave Chronicle, and I'm going to be talking about cheddar.
Cheddar?
Yep, but not the cheese, but spelled
Okay.
like the cheese.
I'm
So
interested.
there's your cliffhanger for Laura for 2 minutes whenever we whenever we listen to it. But for everybody else, it'll be 2 weeks. So make sure you guys check us out on Patreon, and then we will talk to you next week.
See you, everybody.